Good evening and welcome to A Moment with Vivacious. I am very excited about tonight. We have Miss Crystal Petit. She's been an educator for 20 years or more. She also deals in mental health, a licensed provider for mental health, and she's here with us tonight to help prepare, get our children to go back to school, children and parents. I think we need this. Our children are our most valuable possession. And as we build this future and all the things around, it's for them. So we have to make sure they're solid in the future that we're preparing for them because we're fighting for them, right? Right. See you in just a moment with Miss Crystal Petit. Welcome to A Moment with Vivacious, a freedom ride where we the people gather to build ourselves, our family, our community, and our nation. For the sound of America for Progress has reached critical mass. Understanding that we must put aside our differences to focus on the greater good. This is a place of collaboration to rebuild and restore our nation. Welcome to A Moment with Vivacious. Hello, and I want to thank Nola Reeds and Sigrid for being on tonight. And to the world, this is Crystal Petit, an educator and a mental health provider. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself tonight?
Well, first of all, hello, Vivacious, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Um, as you said, I am Crystal Petit. Most of the kids know me as Miss Petite. I am in the school system. I have been an educator for over 20 years. I just have a love for children since the beginning, as far back as I can remember. From babysitting, I always wanted to educate and play school, and um, that love found me in the classroom, but as a paraeducator. And it wasn't until an experience with a young student expressing a need to want to harm herself to end her life that I had an experience in a school social worker's office. And I realized, okay, this is what I was created for, to affect positive change in the lives of our future. Our children long for direction. They long for consistency and fidelity. And as adults, we are charged with that responsibility to do that for them, but from a perspective of love and understanding, not judgment, and do as I say, not as I do, type of approach. So that's what drew me into education, but more so the mental health perspective was really important to me, in understanding trauma and helping parents navigate through the educational system with resources to empower them and their children.
It's so much going on with education today. And many grandmothers are raising their grandkids, sending them to school.
Yeah.
And we're like, you better listen when I say and close your mouth. I still wonder, we could talk about that later. I still wonder, how in the world these children get to say all of this stuff with no wisdom? Oh my head, they think they can rule the world with a half a cup of knowledge and understanding and wisdom. But look, this is a very important conversation. I've talked to many parents. School has changed so since I had to send a child to school.
Mm-hmm.
To sometimes I'm believing that, and I'm hearing from parents, is they don't know when to start to how to prepare. And if we can, a little later tonight, at some time, the curriculum. How can parents put a voice into curriculum? But let's start talking about sending our babies back to school.
So with sending our kids back, we have to understand that it's important for us to have an open conversation. And nobody wants summer to end. But now, right now, tonight, it's important to facilitate an open conversation. How you feeling about going back to school? And they will be honest with you. You know, some of them are going to be excited and some of them are going to be really nervous. And it may be what we call a trigger for them. And when we have that emotional trigger, we're going to respond in many different ways. So you'll see symptoms of anxiety or depression manifest as, you know, a change in appetite, a change in sleeping pattern, or, you know, just something out of the ordinary that is not related to the day-to-day behavior that you see in your child. So the conversation starts first. It's paramount. And allowing them to express what they are feeling and creating a plan with them to help alleviate, you know, the concern. They might be concerned about meeting a new teacher, starting a new school. You know, you need to have those open conversations so then you can have an open line of communication to facilitate those things at that time. Go to meet and greets. You know, don't shy away from parent teacher conferences. Have that phone call with the teacher so they know your child and express, look, my baby is nervous about coming. You know, they're unsure about whatever your child has expressed to you, and you become that front line of defense. You are the advocate. So if something does go wrong, you know, they feel comfortable enough to come and say, look, this is what happened. And you can then approach it from a respectful, you know, mindful way that the teacher doesn't feel attacked. So we can facilitate that healthy relationship. Because, you know, like you said, school is very different and parenting is different. So we have to be mindful of the knowledge we bring into these educational situations so that the child can stay in the forefront of the decision making process. We got to get self out the way. You know, the ego can be big on both sides. Don't nobody want nobody messing with their baby, you know, and it's the kids understand that as well. So you have to be mindful of that game that will be played, you know, throughout the school year and even entering in, because it is a new situation and children tend to be manipulative to get what they want out of that situation. And so you'll see school refusal. You'll see, you know, a decline in participation, which will negatively impact grades. And you just want to get ahead of the curve when it comes to being acclimated and getting back into that school routine. Sleeping patterns are very important. Start to pull back on screen time and pull back on the amount of, you know, access that the kids have to the phone. That's very, very difficult, but it's a necessity in order to have a successful school year.
Um, Nola Reed says back to school starts before the actual first day. We have to get them prepared mentally for the return. One problem my grandson had in school is he complains about the children not paying attention. And I understand, for me, I can't learn. I'm coming here to learn. These children play too much. That's what he tell me sometimes. That's my little friend. But I find that the structure of the classroom is very, let me just say, very different. I won't say it in a judgmental way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was in school and when I taught school for 4 years, you had to sit down and pay attention in my class, but school is different. Could we talk about the structure of the class and what the students can expect and how, and the parents?
So most states operate from a Common Core curriculum perspective, and depending on the type of school that you're in, whether it be a charter school where it's ran by a charter or public. You have a board, and the board educates you on the type of structure that you can anticipate, within the classroom. But most classrooms have an empowerment based perspective where they have rules that are lined out so we can understand the behavior. Raise your hand, before talking or answering a question. That teacher states what the rules are, what the guidelines and boundaries are. But that comes with open communication, like I said, with the teacher that's going to educate your child. So you get to know them and you can ask them, what's your teaching style? What can I expect from my child to learn while they are within your classroom? What is that teacher's values? How is she going to educate, encourage, and empower your child? And as a parent, you have the absolute right to know what lessons are coming up. Ask for that teacher's lesson plan. How is that teacher going to communicate with you the flow of the day? Like I said earlier about fidelity and consistency. If you have an adolescent, like your grandson that's junior high, going into high school, they need consistency. So people talking out of turn, being disruptive, that's a negative for him because it's disrupting his consistency with the flow of the education that the teacher is trying to impart, and he knows that value. So I applaud him for that.
And thinking of school, I want to bring up just a little bit of mental health right now. Can I?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Because of course I always bring this up at our work. But let me make a pause. If you're on tonight, please press like and say hello so we'll know you're here. So we notice all summer long we don't have many. Also, Nola Reed said that triggers him when the kids cut up. That's a trigger for him. But during the summer, we don't have many children. As many. We do have some children come in, but as many children come in for mental health and crisis as we do in school. Is it the pressure of the school? Is it what could it be that happens to the children when it's school time?
So statistically, when you think about, how children respond to school and different situations that trigger them, when you think back to COVID, we had 35% of our kids, lose information that they needed when school closed. So that socialization, the normal interactions that they had day to day, that was just abruptly cut off. So some kids had positive gains based upon the makeup of the family within the home during that time, and some kids had negative gains. Anxiety, depression, all of those things manifest more during the school year because they're having all of these social interactions that trigger negative display mental health wise. So like I said before, you have to know your child and have those open conversations to where they feel comfortable saying, I legit feel sad. And if they're feeling sad more often than not, then they need to speak with a mental health provider, a specialist. Most schools now have counselors, mental health providers on site. So you'll see these triggers happening, and then an assessment is able to be made within the school system, and they're referred out to, a crisis center or an outside provider, depending on the severity of what that clinician would see within the school setting. So that's why you see that influx. And it's statistically proven, now that school is a major trigger. Bullying, social media, all of these things need to be topics of discussion at the dinner table. And you set time aside and you make sure that priority is understood, meaning you got boundaries during, certain times of family interaction. And I feel like dinner is like a very important sacred time for family to come together and have real conversations that have substance without disruption. So I know for me and mine, it's a no phone zone, no electronics during that time. So we can really interact with each other and understand what it is to show empathy, like I feel how you feel, type of thing. Even, I know the siblings of my kids, they probably really don't care, what the other one is thinking or feeling, but it allows for that space so they can learn how to deal with their own emotional triggers and know, like, I'm not alone in how I feel. And I do have the capability to self-regulate, because when you can't self-regulate, you completely lose it. And if you are not taught how to deal with that effectively, it can negatively impact your environment.
Can you talk to us about self-regulation? Some of us may not understand that term. That's really good, really good conversation.
So self-regulation just simply means that you have the capability to calm yourself within stressful times. You have good stress and you have bad stress. Like I said, some kids are excited, like, yes, I'm going back to school, I'm gonna see my friends, but that still comes with a level of anxiety and stress, getting prepared. Some kids have that negative feel like, ugh, I don't even want to go. I don't want to meet no new friends. I'm good. So that regulatory process comes from doing something that's healthy, that can take the mind away from that anxiety, whether it be, taking a walk or listening to their favorite music or journaling or art, something that is going to be intellectually stimulating but healthy. We always want a healthy outlet because we know all too often kids have negative outlets that can still provide some sense of relief or regulation, but it's not healthy. So, emotional regulation a lot of times now is also taught in school. The teachers have like a color code, like from little bitty, you get your, preschool folder or kindergarten, they had a green day, it was good, or you got a yellow, a red, it was a completely, terrible day. So that is a good way to bring that back to your children's memory, even if they've passed that point of development. Like, look, you got to be able to recognize when you need to regulate, and you got to be able to apply the skills that are going to help you get there. But more in-depth skills are learned through therapy, deep breathing, mindfulness, meditation, many different aspects of what that regulation looks like. But that's it, kind of in a nutshell.
Well, another thing I noticed, and I'm getting way off on the mental health side, but that's okay, because I want to talk about the scholastics also.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of moms right now is going through stressful time, and a lot of single parents, let's say. We have an increased number of grandmothers raising children that they can't even relate to. Mm-hmm. And then we have some dads. We don't often recognize single dads, but there's some dads that are single, and then there's some moms that whole life is just like she's trying to bring herself together, so she's not there for the kids. And some things parents I don't know because I don't know parenting now, but the relationship can't correlate. Mm-hmm. And the kids, you look at them and say, this mom is, like she's some of that trigger, but she having so much stress too. So I'm looking at it like I'm standing on the outside, all the way on the other side, looking at it like the mom need help so she can help her children. Or how talk about that a little bit, can you please?
Yes, absolutely. So what you were talking about from a mental health perspective, when a mom has a stressful day at work or has a lot of stuff going on outside of the home and then comes home and may not be as understanding, may be short-tempered, and it may not have anything to do with her child. She loves her child, but she's stressed out. That is what we call projection and displacement, because that energy is not even for that child, but mom has to get that out and express herself, or it's going to be bottled up. And we know what happens when things are bottled up. It has to come out eventually. And we want to make sure that we deal with self effectively so we can kind of mitigate that process of projection and displacement, because we all do it. We just, might not know the term that goes with that. But when you think about single mothers or even single fathers, there is some sort of trauma that's connected to that family dynamic. And I mean, it's almost always evident. Like you say, grandmothers are raising children and bringing them to school and providing that parental role. I'm a direct product of a family dynamic like that. And I am eternally grateful for my 93-year-old grandmother, that is still a vital part of my life today. And I understand why I am the way that I am, because of her willingness to understand the trauma that affected our family, with me losing my parents at such a young age, and her understanding, like, okay, this is a traumatic situation, but as a family, we are going to work through it, and her just being the person that she is, in that perspective of allowing me to know both sides of my family, mother and father. So that's really important to parent from a trauma informed perspective. And that shifts the question from what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like that, to what happened to you? And how can we deal with the what happened and all of the connections that go along with that? Your safety, physically feeling safe, emotionally feeling safe, that trustworthiness, giving the child the opportunity to establish trust and understand what that feels and looks like. Because when trauma happens, if one parent is ripped from the family, the child is going to feel uneasy. Where do I feel safe? Where do I fit in? Where do I identify? And then providing a choice for that child, and not persuading them one way or the other, being completely neutral, in the situation, and doing your best not to badmouth a party that may have offended you in the most adult ways that adults understand things to be. Because children, they can sense it, but they don't have the capability of understanding the layers of family trauma as adults do. And then the collaboration within the family to say, you know what, there's some real messed up stuff that happened, and you got to be real about it in order to effectively deal with it. And then when that happens, the empowerment comes, and the child understands, like, some bad stuff is going to happen in life, but I have a village, I have a family, and I'm empowered to move forward in a positive way and make decisions differently for their selves and their families and their children, that can break generational curses and negative mindsets, and just impede on the process of a negative mental state. So it's just, understanding how to effectively deal with our situations. It's all about our response. We're going to all go through some things, but the response is paramount. That determines the outcome.
Sigrid, thank you. That was beautiful. Sigrid said, Crystal, can you speak a little on the importance of keeping up with how your children are doing through the year? and not wait until the end of the year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the most important thing is to understand the teacher's style of communication. And with older parents or grandparents or even younger parents, a text message might be more effective than an email. A phone call, realistically, depending on the amount of children that the teacher has in the classroom, you will probably have to reach out to that teacher because they might not reach out to you until they're too far gone. So it's important to, in the beginning, go to your meet and greet, meet with the child's teacher and establish what's the best form of communication. Now Google Classroom has been adopted as a primary form of communication between your child and home because it's a safe space, it's easy to monitor, and you can access all of the files that your child has. Like I said before, understanding the lesson plan week by week. I would encourage parents and caregivers to know what the child is learning at a week by week basis because that's how the school calendar goes. We have that 8 to 9 week period where we have the data collection process, homework, turning in assignments. A lot of schools don't do homework. So you have to understand if my child isn't getting homework, my child has classwork. And if my child is not completing the classwork, then my child should have homework. So understanding if you are not comfortable with that curriculum, it's not a strong suit, you need to have that open line of communication and know, okay, my child needs to complete this work at school because I don't have the resources at home to complete it. And that goes back to being an advocate for you and your child so that you obligate the teacher to provide you with resources.
Well, that could be a little hard on the teacher if she this my opinion.
Okay.
I can see some teachers being like not totally in agreement because if you have 35 children and you have an hour to teach them, and then it's hard on the parent because what they're teaching is not what they, especially if it's a grandmother, what they're teaching is not, she didn't learn that.
Correct.
So it's, I can't help at home and you don't have enough time in school. And there's this Facebook page that's going around. If you think they should teach children, I want to talk about all of this. I'm laying it down for you to fix it. if if you think the children should still learn cursive, I think that's what it says.
Mm-hmm.
Check yes or something. And people just pass it on, pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking the children should learn phonics. I had years of phonics. And I'm thinking the children should learn critical thinking because they don't have to think. They press 3 buttons and they have information that really don't know anything. Their minds are not being developed. And they don't know how to think things through. But then we say, okay, what is your thoughts on this? And this is me, grandma part, that old lady part. How can they think anything? Because they don't know how to think. Some of the stuff that life is going to bring you can't press a button. And we haven't taught them to think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, okay, go ahead.
I totally agree with what you're saying. As far as we got a few points. That's a loaded question right there. So as far as the cursive or the script handwriting, when you think about it, all of our historical documents are written in cursive. So in order to read cursive, you need to know how to write in cursive. When we think about the state of our educational ranking right now, I think we talked about this previously with us being number 22.
Yeah.
I believe that is a foundational issue of education. And like you said, technology. And having technology can be good, but it can also be bad. You're mentioning some of the negatives where the kids don't have to type. They can press a mic button and say what they want, and then everything populates for them. They are not using their brain. And our brain is a muscle, and you have to exercise it through stimulation in a positive way that's going to add to you. So if you have all of these high-tech AI capabilities, then you're diminishing your own God-given gift of having a fully functional brain by using some of those tools. But at the same time, when you think about how to understand what's going on for that grandparent, it is big opportunity to use that technology to your advantage. Research, go on YouTube and educate yourself through videos of your interests, as it relates to your grandchild and the things that you want to know about them. And when you say having those skills about applying critical thinking, there's an author and former educator, Stephen Covey. He has the book, and it's entitled 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but they have a teenage edition to that book. And I will share that in the link after the video, and viewers can go and just observe that. And it clearly states, and you can apply this to, I always believe in having interventions that the family can use, right? That the mother, that the grandmother, grandfather, whomever is within that dynamic, the children as well, everybody can use the same tool and cultivate it to that particular person, still make it personal, but it has the same effect. So you talk about being proactive, dealing with first things first, and synergizing, meaning using your team, working together to like get the goal done, but also sharpening your saw, which is applying self-care. Everybody has to have that time, that respite time to rejuvenate, pour in to yourself, so then you can still perform your day-to-day at the highest level possible. So that's just a good little starter kit per se to kind of use to kind of get your own children within your own household acclimated to being a leader and understanding critical thinking, because that's what bosses look for when they want to hire somebody. They want a person that's going to be able to think, for themselves, but also think solution oriented and the simplest, most cost effective way, to get to the solution. So what better way to prepare our children for that opportunity than having that instilled in them early, so they know, those core values, and they will be sought after for, positions of opportunity and power.
But I'm understanding, and it's beautiful. And I thank you for all that you're giving to us. But I'm thinking, why don't school, and this may help a whole lot of people out there, especially grandmothers raising their grandchildren, why don't school become more school? Like,
Tell me what you mean by that.
I can remember in 9th grade, I learned civics. And when I tell people, I'm not bringing up the election, but just this, it's the electoral vote. They have no clue. Because do they even teach civics anymore? So, I'm just saying, I'm using that only as an example, because I don't want to turn this into politics, because this is a very, very important night here. How do we get back to school? And if you have that schoolwork in school that you haven't completed, then you, even though the school don't have homework, to me, and To me, you have homework there because you didn't finish that in school. So it has to be completed so you can go tomorrow. The children can't come early. The children don't want their children to spend their whole lunch period. They need a break. They don't want them to spend in the break. They don't want them to stay after school, which could be very difficult on a family. If one child had to stay after school, especially that mom. Moms now, it's not even something that happened outside the house. Moms fretting over, am I gonna have enough food for my children to eat? How many nights do we have to have noodles? Oh, we're running out of noodles. The price of food is just astronomical. So with all of the pressures of life, what happened at school that's taken away or that is not expected if you have to have all your work in school and you don't complete it? And it may be because you don't, you're not up on the level of education, of schooling that they're giving you. You may not be on that grade level. You may not be able to function on that grade level. That might be a reason. You might be playing talking. You might be on your phone because even the kindergartners have phones, my God. But anyway, can we talk about that a little bit? I mean, like if I'm being absurd, then tell me whatever it is.
No, you are making, some really valid points. And school has changed considerably, from, like you say, from when you went to school and from even when I was in elementary, junior high school, things have changed. And part of that change came because of lack of funding. When you think about resources for after school programs or buses that can actually transport children that stay for after school programs to home, in the after school program that understands the social economic status of their students, if they don't have a means to have a healthy meal, that they can actually feed them during that after school program. So all they have to worry about is, washing up and getting into bed when they get home, to really help, facilitate that collaboration, that we need between school and home, more of a community feel. I know when I went to school, it was more of a, community, and that is a beautiful thing. But at the same time, when we think about, like I said before, funding and the lack of people even willing to come into education because of how much it's changed, with parents being combative and very disrespectful and not even understanding that teacher's perspective. So it's a lot of different dynamics that go into why we've seen the change. But as of lately, I know that there is a lot of grant money that's going into, helping reestablish some of those programs that were pre-existing to have that happen. But you have to educate yourself within your community resources. Do you have a Boys and Girls Club? Does your child's school have a PTA, where it's a parent teacher association connection outside of what the school can say happens within the school related to the children? So that's important to know the power you have by being involved in different committees and different organizations that work hand in hand with the school, but it's almost like an independent entity that has the child's well-being at the forefront. So that's how things really mobilize and change. Being involved in your school board, know who is representing you when these decisions are made for funding, because the things that you're talking about, some other schools don't have those issues because they have so much more parental involvement, that things change because of that voice. So that's just really something to be mindful of.
Can you talk a little bit about? I know I was amazed when you started telling me, even your job description and what goes on in your school. And if you don't mind, if we could tell that, so some parents who don't have any of that, any of the things that's going on in your school, that you're leading in your school, that maybe they can look for some of that. But talk to us about the school board. Who is the school board, and how can, I know it may sound, but we need to know. And who is the school board, and do we vote on the school board? And tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that.
Yes. So earlier, if you remembered, I talked about the structure of different school systems, and I've had the opportunity to work in a private school system. I've had the opportunity to do charter and also public, where it
Can
differs.
you break down the difference between
Yes,
charter?
absolutely. So a private school setting is primarily your religious base, where you have Catholic schools or private and parochial where you pay tuition, and that is the dynamic. You go in understanding that it is set up a lot like a bureaucracy or government. Like you have your principal and you have your stakeholders and things of that nature, but it's more or less of a larger board type. It'll be like an archdiocese that has jurisdiction under what is taught, how it's taught, how things are laid out, and you understand that, and you pay for that type of setting. So going to a charter setting, it is a board, but it is separate from a public based board where the state runs it, and it's more or less ran like a corporation. You have a CEO and a CAO that oversees the monies and the decisions of the day to day. So you have a principal, but that principal is a CEO of a corporation, and that is that particular charter, and that's how they have grants and different funding based upon that particular um, category of schoolings. And then you have your public school where you do vote on those representatives for the different districts that are within your school system. So that is important for you to know what district you're in, who is the district person that's running for that position or currently sitting. What are their views? How do they correlate with what you feel is important as a parent? Do you want to have the special transportation available for the kids in a certain way where it's going to be readily and easily accessible? The states have things set up. I know Bulletin 1508, when it talks about in the state of Louisiana to determine special needs and the different criteria children can meet to qualify for different services. And special education doesn't just mean that your child may be developmentally delayed. They may be gifted, and they may also qualify for special education services that can cultivate their gifts. So it's all about an even playing field, allowing public education to be truly what it is supposed to be. That's like the purpose of the board, to push their constituents' views so that they can be voted on and passed. So I know that was a lot
That
of.
was very good.
I hope
That was very good.
it was easy.
And you made some points that was very necessary to me, because a lot of people don't understand why we vote. But you vote and then you go to that meeting. I want to thank Bradana for joining us tonight. And hi, Ace 12, how are you? And you were going to say something else. And I just wanted to say hi to people who had come on the stage and acknowledge them. But you're doing great.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. Thank y'all for joining us.
So then we were talking about that. And I want to talk about how do we, Ace says this was a needed conversation. How do we vary, Ace? Because if we don't, I believe Miss Petit, I believe that we must we must begin a stronger foundation for our children. How do we come? And I'm one of those. I'm with the school system. There's one school county here that says no phones will be. All phones are going to be locked up during school time, and I'm glad for that. Oh wait, we have a different opinion. Nola Reed said, when the state takes over, school suffers. We're dealing with that here in Houston. The teachers and the children suffer. Funding necessary programs get cut, and it's to the students' detriment. So, what would you suggest to parents? I remember when I was coming up, I went to the private school. I went to Catholic school. My daddy paid tuition. So, but my friends went to public school, and the culture of public school in my town was awesome. When you died, and you could be 100 years old, they would say, and she went to John McDonald. Your high school, it had such a strong culture. But because the audience is taking us somewhere else, I'm going there. Okay. The public school system has such a culture to you wore the colors, even though I'm gold and white. I was a gold and white girl. But the colors for my neighborhood, when I was by my dad, it was orange and green. And see, I still remember the colors. And the colors at Clark, when I was by my aunt, was crimson and gray. So, I mean, high school, it was. So what's the difference then and now, and how do we bring that strength? How do we even advocate? Because we're voting for these people who she says is taking the funding away. So how do we advocate?
So when you talk about a school being taken over by the state, so that may mean, a few different things. But within the charter system, like if you lose a charter, it's because you were not doing something to begin with to effectively educate your student body population. And that is determined through a variety of standardized tests just to see students' performance. So when the state comes in and takes over, yes, you see negative impacts initially because they have to make change. They have to either, strip the principal, school staff is going to change, just different dynamics that go into how that process really, has a negative impact initially. And the goal is to have that change happen for the better, but when you are in the thick of it, it doesn't impact you as it would if that your child was coming in, maybe 3 years after the fact, which is unfortunate. But the change comes with that avocation piece of being present in those school board meetings. A lot of them are normally live streamed. YouTube, you can, go back and watch it. And then that will give you the opportunity to reach out to your representative and say, like, look, this is not okay. And consistency is key. You can't just reach out one time and say, yeah, I called them people and, they didn't really do anything for me. They're not going to do what they say, the squeaky wheel, get the oil. You have to really, be persistent in that advocacy piece and be relentless in going for what you feel is absolutely right for you and your children to be successful educationally. Absolutely. Because education is the foundation to change our national projection. It just is.
I'm glad you said that too, because people are now sending their children out of the country to educate them when we used to be number one in the world. Now I want to talk about one more thing because we're coming close to 10 minutes. I want to talk about what does a parent do when their children are slow and behind. Can I say two things at one time? Because
Yes.
I might get the second thing that I'm hoping you. Verdana said so true. When your children is so far behind, because no, like when you're an educator, my daughter's an educator. You're an educator.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see from your kids is great. It's fabulous. But I wouldn't expect anything less. I would come with a different attitude if it wasn't what it is, right?
Right.
So what do we do for those parents who, the children when I was teaching and it was saying no child left behind, they were just passing children.
Mm-hmm.
They were just passing them. So now these children have had children. They don't have a clue about life. So this two things in one. They don't have a clue about you look at some of those mamas and you say, well, I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised that the child is going through this. They learn no discipline, they learn no structure, they learn no boundaries. And now they're raising these kids. They don't read well.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have when there was SRA, reading and comprehension, when I was in school. I didn't see any of that from school. I saw it in my daughter's home because she's an educator.
Right.
But I didn't see any of that coming from school. So how does that parent that I'm gonna say this that was cheated out of an education? Not necessarily. That's not the best word.
Mm-hmm.
How
I understand.
how in the world that family? How can we? Okay, that's it. That's my question. You know what I'm trying to say.
So if you want to gauge where your child is or have a understanding of that intellectual level, say you got a third grader, you want to know if they are indeed reading on a third grade level, you can request the assessment data, because those teachers have assessments. One real popular one is called Dibbles, where the child understands phonics. Like you said, you feel like phonics should be taught in school. So the phonemic awareness of what letters say what sound and how they blend together, reading fluency, them being able to identify what we call sight words. That assessment, can tell you what your child's baseline is. And based on those scores, the teacher should be able to provide interventions to help raise that. Okay. But if you don't know these things, you don't know what to ask, and how to advocate and ask those questions. So you can ask, your child's teacher, I'm really that's the time to express your concerns. I really feel like my child might not be reading on grade level. Can you help me understand if they are? It's all about how you frame the question, because some teachers may feel attacked, like, I'm teaching your child every day, your child just not paying attention. And that's when we come with that, deflection and defense, and people don't want to be blamed for not doing a good job. So that's something those parents can do that feel like maybe they don't know, or they don't have the strongest reading skills, and can go and see for themselves. And it's readily accessible. You Google it, Google sight words and Google Dibbles, and you can even assess with your child and make it fun, make it a game, have them come to the computer instead of playing Roblox, like, okay, let's read this sheet of words, small, simple, start small. And the consistency is key. And then both benefit, caregiver and child benefit from that type of activity. And that's most important. You want to have an intervention that everyone can benefit from on their level. And if mom or dad or caregiver feels uncomfortable, like, I don't want them to know I'm not the strongest reader, they don't know. Y'all learning together.
And how do we get parents who don't have a clue? how can we give them a clue? Like I'm gonna tell you, I went to a girl one time. I was involved with her daughter who was in high school at the time, and I said, I'm gonna make up a name, Jolanda. I don't know nobody named Jolanda. Jolanda doesn't read well.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Oh, for real?" I said, "She doesn't read well. You should get her some help." So she said, she came to me later and said, "Well, I asked the teacher, and the teacher said she can read." I said, "Okay," and I didn't say anything after that.
Mm-hmm. And
But
that may be true. She can read, but at what level? That's the key question. She may be able to read, but at what level can she read? Is she proficient at her grade level, or is she just, surviving? And that's a big difference. And because, yeah, she may be able to read and, decipher some things, but if she's not reading at a high level, then that's going to impact her negatively when it comes to academics.
Nola Reed says, excuse me, it's not just the teachers. Parents need to step up. We are our children's first teachers. They are lazy and expect the kids to raise their disrespectful children. They are lazy and expect the kids to raise their disrespectful children. I think she may have meant teachers.
Meant the teachers.
If you can't read, y'all learn together. Ask for help. There is no excuse for not getting help. The resources are there. And then Sigrid says the parent has to want a. Okay.
Absolutely. I totally agree. But like you said, how do you get somebody to buy in? You just offer the information. Like Nola Reed said, it's out there for you and it's free will. If you want better, you're gonna do better. And access those things that can best benefit. But be your own activist. The things you want to have, happen for yourself, put a post on Facebook about it. Somebody gonna read it. You gonna help somebody, and understand that if it's on your heart and your mind, do it in the moment. And who it's meant for, they'll benefit from it. But you can't save everybody. That's the reality.
Sigrid says, I agree, Nola reads. I know we run out of time, but we're just gonna go over a little bit, okay? Just for working. I was driving this morning. I was on my way to the doctor's office driving. And this lady was walking down the street. And I totally went, once you're in that position, I totally went to assessing this woman. Like, oh man, look at her. She probably was so depressed. The lady may not have been depressed, but her mannerism took me there. She probably just getting her children off, stumbling like, what am I gonna do next? What's gonna happen next? And I think a lot of what happened to a lot of moms that's moms now, their moms lived off the system. They were raised on a system. So they want all of this stuff. And really, I might be feeling too sorry for them. Maybe that's how y'all have me feeling. But they don't know how to, like how do you know to? I want all of this, but there was never a bridge for me to get it in life. And sometimes the way you got it was just all total negative. So, is there anything that we could offer people on that side of life?
When you think about entitlement and, some things people do need, and just look at TANF or food stamps. Now you can get them, but it's time-based. You can't stay on it forever. And I feel like that is a good buffer, because sometimes you are in dire need. You need assistance. You need help. But for you to feel like, oh, I'm gonna have this forever and not have the motivation or the drive to sustain myself, we can't. No, that's a negative. That's unrealistic. And that's when you, like you say, have that cycle of entitlement where I feel like, oh, the government's supposed to take care of me or is going to, at any cost. And that's just not reality. Even with benefiting from kinship, staying with family, you can't just lay on family and not help, throughout the process. That get old real quick. So we need to just have open and honest, loving conversations. Like I said, to really empower ourselves. And it does start at home, it starts with the family, and our children will be much better for if we, as the elders and adults, step up in their lives and really be consistent. Even if it didn't happen for us growing up, we are obligated to make a positive change.
Oh, that was so beautiful. Thank you, Miss Crystal. Sigrid says, so true, Miss Crystal. Miss Crystal, we thank you for being here with us. And Miss Crystal's going to come back at another date and talk about building family. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you sharing, and we appreciate you taking your obligation to society seriously and being here tonight. So can you close us out? What's the one thing you want us to take with you on Sacred Journey? Sacred Journey said, I do think that individuals do become complacent when they are given benefits continuously. Having a time frame allows for people to form a plan going forward. Absolutely right, Sacred Journal. Absolutely right. And I'm thinking the way government is going, we're not going to. Right now, it's like working people need some help. Working people need um, food service. Right now, we're not gonna have all of that. One day you're gonna wake up and you're not gonna have. Look, one day I might wake up after I done worked all these years. Me, you, and everybody else might not have no Social Security. So, Sigrid says so true. So, what is some of the important nuggets that you want us to take with us tonight, Miss Crystal? Oh wait, one more thing before you say that. I want to say, can you please send me some of the information that I can put it on my page? People follow me on YouTube and Nanny Val, uh, so that I can put it out there for people to have information to help their children through the year. We're going to make this a bigger, brighter year for our children. Thank you, Miss Crystal. What's some of the things that we must take away that you've spent time with us tonight?
Absolutely. It's just an honor, and a privilege, and I thank you again for providing this platform. I just want all of the viewers to understand the importance of parenting and the role of being a parent and a caregiver, and understanding that it's okay for you to feel like, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm really just not my best self at this moment, and say that, communicate that, and understand that you have people that are willing to give you a respite time so you can recharge and pour back in to the children that you're caring for. As it relates to us going back, understanding that anxiety and depression will be something that comes up within all developmental stages of our children, from the littlest to our, college freshmen or college seniors. Don't discount a change in behavior. Reach out to your child's school, understand what resources are available there, communicate with the teachers, and like Vivacious requested, I will absolutely send information that parents and caregivers can access. One offhand that I want y'all to go look up tonight is called kidsmentalhealthfoundation.org. you will find a wide array of resources connected to the mental well-being of your children at different levels and stages that can benefit them throughout the school year. And you can go in, they have downloadable forms, everything is free. So go to kids, KIDS, mentalhealthfoundation.org, all one word.
I'm going to give that to the case managers on my job.
Yes, it's a great resource.
Thank you so much. It was so wonderful having you. And you were really good. So we can't wait to hear you tell us how to build our families. So until next time and until next Wednesday, don't forget August 11th, we're going to have Vivacious Speaks, the New American Revolution. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.